The metallic tang of her own blood was the first thing she noticed. It was a coppery poison on her tongue, sharp and sickeningly familiar. The second was the rain, cold and relentless, plastering her fiery red hair to her face and turning the forest floor into a treacherous mire of mud and decaying leaves. She ran. Trees blurred into a suffocating wall of black-green on either side. Branches, like skeletal fingers, clawed at her worn leather jacket, snagging and tearing. Her lungs burned, each ragged gasp a testament to the agony radiating from her shoulder, a deep gash, courtesy of a hunter's silver-tipped arrow, throbbed in time with her frantic heartbeat. Just 2 hours ago, the world had been simple. She had been hunting, moving with the quiet grace of a predator through the moonlit woods, her senses alive. Then, she had stumbled upon them, a clearing. Voices, low and angry. She had frozen, concealed in the shadows of an ancient oak, and watched a nightmare unfold. An alpha, his face contorted in disbelief, brought to his knees before a figure cloaked in shadow. There was no honor in the kill, just a swift, brutal end. The snap of a twig under her own foot had been her undoing. The shadowed figure's head had whipped around. She didn't see a face, only the glint of malevolent eyes, and then she was running. Now her strength was failing. The world tilted, the trees spinning into a dizzying vortex. She stumbled, her boot catching on a twisted root, and pitched forward. The impact with the soggy earth knocked the last of the air from her lungs. She lay there, panting, rain stinging the wound in her shoulder. Defeat tasted like blood and mud. This was it. This was how her lonely, hunted life would end, at the edge of an unknown territory. A new scent cut through the rain-soaked air, pine needles, damp earth, and something else, something wild and powerful. Ozone, like the air after a lightning strike. Alpha, a powerful one. Panic, cold and sharp, gave her a final burst of adrenaline. She tried to scramble to her feet, but her limbs refused to obey. Footsteps, heavy and certain, approached. 2 figures emerged from the gloom. The first was broad-shouldered and moved with an easy confidence, his presence warm despite the chilling rain. The one behind him, however, was the source of that overwhelming power. He was impossibly tall, a silhouette of command against the storm-darkened woods. The tall one stopped a few feet from her, his gaze sweeping over her broken form, even in her dazed state. She could feel the weight of that gaze, like a physical pressure. He said nothing. The broader man spoke, his voice a concerned rumble. "Dom, she's badly wounded. A rogue, by the smell of it." The alpha, Dom, finally moved. He crouched down beside her, the scent of him washing over her senses. It was intoxicating and terrifying all at once. He reached out, his long, calloused fingers brushing a strand of wet hair from her face. The moment his skin touched hers, it happened. A shock, white-hot and absolute, arced between them. It was not the sting of silver, but something deeper, something that coiled in the very marrow of her bones. It was a jolt of pure energy, a spark of impossible recognition that lit up every nerve ending in her body. For a breathtaking second, the pain in her shoulder vanished, replaced by a searing, undeniable pull toward this stranger. His hand recoiled as if burned. A sharp, guttural sound tore from his throat, not a word, but a growl of pure, unadulterated shock. His silver eyes, which she could now see glinting in the faint moonlight, widened. But beneath the shock, she saw something else flicker there. Pain, an agony that mirrored the one she'd just felt, but twisted into something sharp and forbidding. His wolf. She could feel it through the sudden, fragile connection between them. Wasn't howling in triumph. It was screaming. "What was that, the other man?" Marcus asked, his voice tight with alarm. He took a step closer, sniffing the air. Her scent. "Dom, it's familiar, but I can't place it." The alpha. Dominic ignored him. He was still staring at her, his jaw tight, the muscles in his powerful frame coiled like springs. The connection between them thrummed, a painful, beautiful melody only they could hear. He was her. The thought died before it could fully form, smothered by the wave of agony that radiated from him, a backlash that pushed her away even as the bond tried to pull her in. He decided then. She saw the shift in his eyes, the cold mask of the alpha slamming down, extinguishing the flicker of bewildered connection. The law was clear. Rogues found on pack territory, especially ones drenched in the blood of a fresh kill, were to be executed. No questions, no mercy. Yet, he didn't give the order. Instead, with a motion that was surprisingly gentle, he scooped her into his arms. The contact was agonizing, another jolt of that fiery, cursed energy, but it was also solid, safe. The world swam, and she surrendered to the darkness. The last thing she registered was the steady, thundering beat of his heart against her ear. When she woke, it was to the cloying scent of antiseptic and the chilling cold of iron bars. She was in a cell, stark, clean, and inescapable. She pushed herself up, her shoulder bandaged, the pain now a dull, persistent ache. He was there, standing on the other side of the bars, watching her. Dominic Steele. His tall frame filled the doorway, arms crossed over his broad chest. His black hair was damp, clinging to his forehead, and a long, faded scar sliced down his left cheek, giving his handsome face a dangerous, brutal edge. His silver eyes were chips of ice, unreadable and cold. Their eyes met, the bond, that terrible, beautiful thing, flared to life again. A silent current of longing and pain passed between them. He felt it. She knew he did. His jaw clenched, a muscle twitching along the line of his scar. He broke the silence, his voice a low, rumbling stone that vibrated through the floor, through the bars, and into her very soul. You have 24 hours to explain why you trespassed on my land, reeking of another alpha's death, he stated, his tone devoid of any emotion. If you fail to convince me, you will die. The threat hung in the sterile air of the cell. As cold and hard as the iron bars that separated them, Scarlett pushed herself into a sitting position, her movements stiff. Every instinct screamed at her to bare her teeth, to snarl a defiant reply. But she was a survivor. She had lasted 15 years as a rogue by being smart, not just strong. And the alpha standing before her was a force of nature she had no hope of challenging in her current state. She held his gaze, refusing to show the fear that fluttered in her stomach. I didn't kill him. A flicker of something disbelief annoyance crossed his face. Convenient. She thought of her life, a chaotic mosaic of borrowed cabins, fleeting alliances, and the constant, gnawing loneliness of having no pack, no anchor. She couldn't remember anything before the age of 10, her past a black hole of forgotten trauma. Her only link was the small, tarnished silver locket she wore around her neck, its chain cool against her skin. It was shaped like a crescent moon, and it had been with her for as long as she could remember. It was the only proof that she had existed before she was just a rogue. She had learned the hard way not to trust, not after a small pack took her in 3 years ago, only to try and sell her to a rival for breeding. She had escaped. But the scars, both visible and invisible, remained. Dominic studied her, his silver eyes missing nothing. The silence stretched, thick with unspoken questions. He was fighting a war within himself. She could almost feel the turmoil radiating from him. The man, the alpha, saw a threat, but the wolf, his wolf was clawing at the bars of its own internal cage, desperate to get to her. Then who did, he finally asked, his voice dangerously soft. I didn't see a face, she admitted, hating the weakness in it. Just a shadow. They were fast, powerful. And you just happened to be there. I was hunting. She squared her shoulders. And I'm not your enemy. A humorless smile touched his lips. not reaching his eyes. On my land, covered in another alpha's blood, everyone is a suspect until proven otherwise. He turned to leave, the interview apparently over. "Wait!" she called out, her voice stronger than she expected. He paused, his back still to her. "I saw something," she said, the memory flashing in her mind. The killer wore a cloak. When it moved, I saw an emblem on the clasp, a rearing wolf, encircled by thorns. Dominic went completely still. Slowly, he turned back to face her, and for the first time, the icy mask cracked. She saw a raw, unguarded intensity in his eyes that made her breath catch. "The Northern Council," he breathed, the words more to himself than to her. Later, in the sterile quiet of his office, Dominic paced like a caged animal, the scent of her wild lilac crushed underfoot, and the sharp tang of her blood clung to him, refusing to fade. It was driving him mad. His wolf, a beast of logic and control, was a raging inferno, howling one word over and over again, mate, mate, mate. But it was impossible. Mates were a blessing, a strengthening of the soul. What he felt when he touched her was a curse, a searing pain that shot through him, centering on an old, silver-white scar over his heart that had never hurt before. It felt like his very soul was being ripped in two directions. Marcus entered without knocking, his expression grim. "The Council of Five has been notified. Alpha Davis of the Blackwood Pack is confirmed dead, killed on the edge of our territory." He paused, leaning against the massive oak desk. His pack falls under the Northern Council's jurisdiction. "The emblem she described," Dominic said, stopping his pacing to stare out the window at the rain-lashed forest. "A wolf and thorns. That's Sinclair's personal crest." "Alpha Sinclair of the Northern Council," Marcus confirmed, his voice grave. "This is bad. Dom. Politically. It's a nightmare. They'll demand we hand her over. And if she's telling the truth, if Sinclair's people killed one of their own and are trying to frame a rogue to start a war, then we're walking into a trap," Marcus said quietly. He watched his alpha, his friend, for a long moment. "Your wolf has been screaming since you brought her in. I can feel its distress through the pack bond. She's your mate, isn't she?" Dominic slammed his fist on the windowsill, the wood groaning in protest. "It doesn't matter, it can't be." He finally looked at Marcus, his eyes haunted. "The pain, Marcus. When I touch her, it feels like I'm being torn apart. It's wrong." The next morning, Dominic returned to the cell. He carried not a tray of food, but a simple, polished silver collar. "I'm giving you a chance," he said, his voice flat and businesslike. "You say you can help me find the real killer. Prove it." Hope, a dangerous, fragile thing, flickered in Scarlett's chest. "And if I do, you earn your freedom." He held up the collar. "But until then, you will wear this. It's enchanted. It will prevent you from shifting. You will remain on packlands, under guard, and you will answer to me." She eyed the silver warily. It was a leash, a symbol of her captivity, but it was also a lifeline. She nodded slowly. "I agree." He unlocked the cell door and stepped inside. The small space immediately felt claustrophobic, charged with his presence. He moved toward her, and her heart began to hammer against her ribs, a wild bird beating against a cage. The air grew thick, heavy with the scent of pine and lightning, and that impossible pull between them intensified until it was a physical ache in her chest. He gestured for her to turn. She obeyed, her body tense. She could feel his body heat behind her, could almost hear the controlled rhythm of his breathing. He lifted her heavy, damp hair away from her neck, his fingers brushing against her skin. Fire. A jolt, even more potent than the first, shot through her. She gasped, her head falling back against his chest instinctively. His breath hitched. She could feel the shudder that ran through his powerful frame. For a dizzying moment, everything else faded. There was only the warmth of his hand on her skin, the dizzying scent of him, and the primal, desperate need to turn, to press herself against him, to close the agonizing distance between them. His hands were at her neck, fumbling with the clasp of the collar. His knuckles grazed the sensitive skin just below her ear, and a soft, involuntary sigh escaped her lips. Then the pain hit. It was his, not hers, but she felt it as if it were her own. A low groan was ripped from his throat, a sound of pure agony. He stiffened, his whole body locking up. She twisted around, her eyes wide with alarm. He was clutching his chest, right over his heart, his face pale and beaded with sweat. His silver eyes were screwed shut in pain. "Dominic," she cried out, her own hand flying to her chest, where a phantom heat was spreading. The clasp of the collar clicked shut. He staggered back, away from her, breathing heavily. He leaned against the wall, the moment of connection shattered, replaced by that horrific, inexplicable torment. Just as he straightened up, a new voice echoed down the corridor. It was feminine, melodic, and laced with steel. "Dominic, darling, I came as soon as I heard. Dealing with rogue filth again." A woman appeared at the cell door. She was stunningly beautiful, with hair the color of spun gold and eyes as blue as a winter sky. She was dressed in immaculate, expensive clothing that seemed entirely out of place in the grim holding cells. She moved with the predatory grace of a she-wolf who knew her own power. She ignored Scarlett completely, her gaze fixed on Dominic. She glided over to him, wrapping her arms around his neck and pressing a possessive kiss to his lips. "I've missed you, my love," she purred, her eyes finally flicking over to Scarlett, a cruel, triumphant smirk playing on her perfect lips. "You should know better than to play with the Alpha's things." Then she turned her smile back to Dominic, her voice dripping with sweetness. "Isn't that right? Fiancé." The word fiancé struck Scarlett with the force of a physical blow. A cold, heavy stone settled in her stomach, an unfamiliar sensation that tasted suspiciously like jealousy. It was absurd. She didn't know this man. He was her captor, an alpha who held her life in his hands. And yet, watching the blonde woman hang from his arm, a primal, possessive rage ignited within her, so fierce and unexpected it left her breathless. Dominic gently disentangled himself from the woman's embrace, his expression unreadable. "Victoria," he said, his voice level, "your arrival is unexpected." "I heard there was trouble at the border. My father was so concerned," Victoria Sinclair said, her voice a silken weapon. She ran a perfectly manicured nail along the scar on his cheek. "I came to make sure my future husband was all right." Her gaze slid back to Scarlett, dripping with condescension, and to see the creature that caused all this fuss. Marcus arrived then, his presence a welcome buffer to the suffocating tension. "Alpha, the council is waiting." He gave Victoria a polite, if strained, nod. "Lady Victoria." Dominic's eyes met Scarlett's for a fleeting second. The raw pain was gone, replaced by that cold, impenetrable mask. "Marcus, take our guest to one of the North Wing rooms. She is to be confined there until this investigation is concluded." Victoria's perfectly sculpted eyebrow arched. "You're keeping her in the pack house." "She is a material witness," Dominic stated, his tone leaving no room for argument. He turned and walked away, Victoria's light steps echoing his heavy ones down the hall. Marcus let out a low whistle once they were gone. "Well, that was fun," he muttered, unlocking her cell. "Come on, the North Wing isn't so bad, fewer bars, at least." He led her through the sprawling pack house. It was a fortress of dark wood, stone, and glass. Modern, but built with the strength of an ancient stronghold. Warriors nodded respectfully to Marcus as they passed, their curious gazes lingering on Scarlett and the silver collar around her neck. She felt like an exhibit, a stray animal brought in from the wild. The room was Spartan but comfortable, with a bed, a small wardrobe, and a window overlooking a rain-swept courtyard. "Someone will bring you food," Marcus said, pausing at the door. "Don't try to leave the house. The grounds are heavily patrolled." "That woman, Victoria." Scarlett started, the name feeling like ash in her mouth. "Are they really?" "Engaged," Marcus sighed, running a hand through his hair. "For 2 years. It's a political alliance, the Northern Council and Shadowfang. It's meant to unite the territories, create the strongest force in the region." He looked at her, his expression softening with something like pity. "The wedding is in 3 months. After he left, Scarlett sank onto the bed, the mattress soft beneath her. 3 months. The thought sent another irrational pang through her. The mate bond. She realized it was the bond that was causing this. It was a living, breathing entity inside her, and it was recoiling in agony at the idea of him belonging to another. She hated the feeling. She hated the weakness of it. Days blurred into a restless routine. She was fed, watched, and ignored. The investigation was clearly happening somewhere beyond her locked door. Trapped and restless, she began to explore her limited confines. She discovered that her room was part of a quieter, older section of the house. One afternoon, driven by boredom, she found a door at the end of the hall slightly ajar. Inside was a library. It was a magnificent room, 2 stories high, with towering shelves filled with leather-bound books. The air smelled of old paper, leather, and wood smoke from a massive, cold fireplace. It felt sacred, a place of history and secrets. Forgetting she was a prisoner, she stepped inside, running her fingers along the spines of ancient-looking tomes. She found a section on pack histories, pulling out a heavy book titled The Great Packs a History. She sat in a worn leather armchair. She skimmed past chapters on Shadowfang and the Northern Packs until a name caught her eye, the True Blood Pack. The text described them as werewolf royalty, a pack descended directly from the first werewolves, possessing unique abilities and a raw power no other bloodline could match. They had been the undisputed leaders of the werewolf world. Had been. The chapter ended abruptly, with a grim final entry. 15 years ago, the True Blood Pack was annihilated in a single night. A fire. An attack accounts vary. There were no survivors. The royal line was extinguished forever. Beneath the text was a faded, artist's rendering of the last royal family, an alpha with kind eyes and reddish hair, a beautiful Luna with a gentle smile, and a little girl with a wild mane of red hair, no older than 10, grinning a gap-toothed smile. Scarlett stared at the image, a strange sense of déjà vu washing over her. It was like looking at a photograph of a dream she couldn't quite remember. Her fingers traced the face of the little girl, an inexplicable sadness welling up inside her. Enjoying the history lesson, Rogue. Scarlett jumped, the book falling from her lap. Victoria Sinclair stood in the doorway, leaning against the frame as if she owned the room, which, Scarlett supposed, she practically did. "Just passing the time," Scarlett said, her voice cool as she bent to retrieve the book. Victoria strolled into the room, her movements sleek and predatory. "It's a sad story. Isn't it an entire line of so-called royalty? Wiped out, it just goes to show. Power isn't about blood. It's about who is strong enough to take it." She stopped in front of Scarlett's chair, looking down at her. "A stray like you should understand that." "I understand survival," Scarlett shot back, meeting her cold blue gaze. "Something you probably know very little about." Victoria's smile was a slash of red. "Oh, I know more than you think." She glanced at the book in Scarlett's lap. "Dominic is a good alpha, but he's too sentimental, keeping you alive, letting you wander his home. It's a weakness." "I'll be gone soon," Scarlett said, standing up, needing to be on even ground with this woman. "Don't worry. I have no interest in your house or your fiancé." The words felt like a lie, even to her. Victoria's smile tightened. She stepped closer, invading Scarlett's personal space. The scent of her expensive perfume was cloying. She leaned in, as if to share a secret, her voice dropping to a venomous whisper meant only for Scarlett's ears. "You should have died 15 years ago, along with your pathetic mother and father." The world tilted. The air rushed from Scarlett's lungs. The whispered words were a key turning a lock deep inside her mind, a lock she hadn't known existed. Fire, screaming, the smell of blood. Scarlett staggered back, her hand flying to the locket at her throat. The familiar silver shape suddenly felt foreign, heavy. Victoria watched her, a look of cruel satisfaction on her face, before turning and gliding out of the library, leaving Scarlett alone with the ghosts that had just been woken. Her hands trembled as she fumbled with the clasp of her locket. It was old, the catch stiff. She'd never tried to open it before, with a final desperate twist. It sprang open. Inside, it was empty. But on the back of the silver crescent, etched in tiny, faded letters, were two initials. L.T. Luna Trueblood. A scream tore through her mind, not her own, but a memory. A woman's voice, desperate and full of love. "Run, my love, run in and don't look back." Scarlett sank to her knees, the book forgotten on the floor, as 15 years of forgotten memories began to claw their way to the surface. The dream was always the same. Fire, so much fire. It licked at the walls of a great hall that felt like home, painting the tapestries in horrifying shades of orange and black. The air was thick with smoke and the coppery stench of blood. Screams echoed, familiar voices crying out in pain and then falling silent. A man with hair like fire stood before her, his sword raised, a shield between her and the monsters. Father, another man, his face cruelly handsome, laughed as he plunged a silver blade into her father's heart, Alpha Sinclair. Then a woman's arms were around her, her scent of lilac and vanilla a desperate comfort in the chaos. Mother! She was pushed toward a hidden passage behind a tapestry, a frantic, loving whisper. "Run, Luna, run, and don't ever look back. I love you." And then the face of a young girl, only a little older than herself, with cold blue eyes, watching from the corner, a smirk on her lips as the world burned. Victoria. Scarlett woke with a gasp, the scream dying in her throat. She was drenched in sweat, her body trembling uncontrollably. The sheets of the bed were twisted around her legs. The dream wasn't a dream. It was a memory. Luna Trueblood. That was her name. The little girl in the book was her. The door to her room burst open. Dominic stood there, silhouetted against the dim light of the hall. He must have heard her. He took in the scene, her panicked state, the wild look in her eyes, and something in his rigid posture softened. The cold Alpha receded, and for a moment, just a man stood there. "A nightmare?" he asked, his voice a low rumble. She couldn't speak, only nod, wrapping her arms around herself. He hesitated for only a second before crossing the room in 3 long strides. He didn't sit on the edge of the bed, but right next to her. His solid warmth, a startling contrast to the chilling fear that gripped her. Instinctively, she leaned toward him, seeking an anchor in the storm of her returning memories. To her utter astonishment, he didn't pull away. Instead, he raised an arm, hesitated again, and then wrapped it around her trembling shoulders, pulling her against his side. The contact sent the familiar jolt of fire and ice through them, but this time it was muted, overshadowed by the overwhelming sense of comfort his proximity provided. His body was hard as stone, but the gesture was surprisingly gentle. Her head found the crook of his shoulder, and she finally let out a choked sob. They sat like that in silence for a long time, the only sound her ragged breathing slowly evening out. The pain of the curse was still there, a low thrum beneath the surface, a constant reminder of the barrier between them. But for now, the protective instinct of the mate bond was stronger. He was shielding her, and she was letting him. They killed them. She finally whispered into the fabric of his shirt, "Sinclair and Victoria, they were there. They killed my family." Dominic's arm tightened around her. "The True Bloods." It wasn't a question. She pulled back just enough to look at him, her tear-filled green eyes meeting his steady silver ones. "My name is Luna, Luna Trueblood." He simply nodded, as if she had just confirmed something he had already begun to suspect. The look in his eyes wasn't pity. It was something deeper, understanding, and a dawning. Terrible anger directed not at her, but at the people who had destroyed her life. "They said everyone died," he said, his voice rough with emotion. "No one survived." "My mother hid me," Scarlet Luna explained, the words tumbling out. Marcus was there. He was one of our warriors. He got me out." It was all coming back now, hazy pieces clicking into place. Marcus, younger, his face grim, leading her through the forest, a strange-smelling tea, and then, nothing. "He took my memories, didn't he? To protect me?" Before Dominic could answer, a warrior appeared at the open door, his expression urgent. "Alpha rogues are attacking the Southern Patrol. 3 warriors are down." The spell was broken. The Alpha mask slammed back into place. Dominic gently released her, the loss of his warmth leaving her feeling cold and exposed. He stood, all business once more. "I have to go," he said. He looked down at her, and for a split second, the mask slipped again. A hint of that protective warmth returned to his eyes. "Stay here. Lock the door. Don't let anyone in." The command was absolute, but the undercurrent was clear. Stay safe. He was gone in a blur of motion, his powerful presence replaced by a sudden, aching void. Scarlet was left alone in the room, the ghosts of her past swirling around her, her true identity finally, terrifyingly, restored. Dominic moved through the forest like a wraith, his warriors struggling to keep pace. His mind was a battlefield. Luna Trueblood, the last of the royal line, the rightful true alpha of all werewolves. His mate. The implications were staggering, sending shockwaves through everything he thought he knew about his world, his duty, and the strange, painful connection he had to her. He found Marcus coordinating the defense at the southern border. The rogue attack was small, more of a diversion than a real threat. They dispatched them with brutal efficiency. Afterward, as the medics tended to the wounded, Dominic cornered Marcus against a massive pine. "You knew," Dominic growled, his voice low and dangerous. "All this time, you knew who she was." Marcus didn't flinch, his gaze steady. "I did what I had to. I swore an oath to her father, Alpha Valerius, to protect her with my life. The world thinking she was dead was the only thing keeping her safe, keeping you safe." "Keeping me safe? What are you talking about?" Marcus looked pained, the weight of his 15-year secret pressing down on him. There are old laws, Dom, old prophecies, and old curses. There's a reason the pain between you is so strong. The fated mate bond between the alpha of Shadowfang and the true alpha of the True Blood line is cursed. Dominic stared at him, the world narrowing to a single point. Cursed how? "The curse was cast generations ago by a vengeful witch," Marcus explained, his voice heavy with dread. "It forbids the 2 most powerful bloodlines from ever uniting. If the mate bond is completed, one of you will die. Your power will consume hers, or hers will consume yours, until only one remains." Dominic's words, "Stay here, lock the door," echoed in Scarlet's mind, but they were drowned out by the thunder of her own rediscovered past. She was not a nameless rogue to be hidden away. She was Luna Trueblood, and her family's murderers were preparing to marry into the pack that was now her prison. She couldn't sit still. She couldn't wait. The diversionary attack at the southern border was too convenient. It was a ploy to draw Dominic away from her. Adrenaline surged through her veins, using the survival skills honed over 15 years of living in the shadows. She found a way out. A loose floorboard in the wardrobe concealed a narrow servant's passage, long forgotten. It was a tight squeeze, dusty and filled with cobwebs, but it led her to the kitchens and from there, out into the rainy night. The silver collar was a cold, hateful weight on her neck, a constant reminder of her powerlessness. She couldn't shift, but she was still a predator. She moved silently through the woods, her senses, even in human form, sharper than any normal person's. She followed the lingering scent of decay and violence back toward the border where she had first been found, to the place where Alpha Davis had died. The area was a mess of trampled earth and broken branches, the smell of old blood still faint in the air. She cast her eyes about, searching for anything the Shadowfang patrols might have missed. Her rogue's eye for detail paid off. Tucked beneath the ferns, almost completely obscured, was a small, torn piece of dark fabric. It was from a cloak, and attached to it was a silver clasp. A wolf encircled by thorns. The Northern Council. Northern. Her fingers brushed something else in the mud, a folded, waterlogged piece of parchment. Carefully. She opened it. The ink was blurred, but the words were still legible. Phase 1 complete. The diversion was successful. Prepare for the blood moon. The last true blood will soon be ours. A trap. It was all a trap. They hadn't been trying to frame her for murder. They had been trying to capture her. They knew who she was all along. A twig snapped behind her. She spun around, dropping into a defensive crouch. 5 figures emerged from the trees, clad in black, their faces obscured by masks. They moved with the silent, deadly coordination of trained assassins. The Alpha was foolish to leave his new pet unguarded. One of them sneered. They attacked. Without her wolf, Scarlet was at a severe disadvantage, but she was no helpless human. She was a fighter, lean and strong, with 15 years of desperate survival etched into her muscles. She moved like a dancer, dodging a silver knife, using her attacker's momentum to send him crashing into a tree. She kicked another in the knee, the crack of bone echoing in the clearing. But there were too many. A searing pain shot through her leg as a blade sliced deep into her thigh. Another blow caught her in the ribs, knocking the wind out of her. She staggered back, her vision spotting. They were closing in, a circle of silver and shadows. One of them lunged, knife aimed for her heart. She threw up her arm to block, and the blade, instead of hitting flesh, struck the silver collar around her neck with a loud clang. And then something impossible happened. As the assassin's knife scored a deep scratch across the collar, a drop of Scarlet's blood from a cut on her hand dripped onto the enchanted metal. The collar exploded. A wave of pure energy erupted from her, throwing the assassins backward. A blinding white light enveloped her, and a power she hadn't felt in 15 years surged through her veins. It was the power of her bloodline, ancient and immense, finally unbound. She shifted. It wasn't the clumsy, painful shift of a normal wolf. It was instantaneous, a fluid transformation of bone and sinew. When the light faded, she was no longer a woman. She stood on 4 powerful legs, taller than any wolf she had ever seen. Her fur was not gray or brown, but a luminous, pearlescent white, like fresh snow under a full moon. Her eyes, once green, now glowed with the molten gold of a true alpha. The remaining assassins stared, their confident sneers replaced by raw terror. They had come for a rogue girl. They had found a goddess of the hunt. She let out a howl. It was not a sound of pain or loneliness, but a declaration of power, a royal decree that shook the very trees. With a snarl, she launched herself at them. The fight was no longer a fight. It was a reckoning. She moved with impossible speed and strength, a whirlwind of white fur and righteous fury. The leader of the group, seeing his men fall, turned to flee. As he disappeared into the shadows, he yelled back, his voice shaking, "The blood moon is coming for you, Luna Trueblood." The fight was over. The adrenaline faded, leaving only pain and exhaustion. Her wounds, both old and new, screamed in protest. Her legs gave out, and she collapsed to the forest floor, shifting back to her human form as she fell. That was how Dominic found her. He and his warriors burst into the clearing, drawn by her howl. He stopped dead, his silver eyes wide with shock as he took in the scene, the bodies of the assassins, the broken collar, and Scarlet, naked and bleeding, lying in the center of it all. Marcus was at his side, his voice a reverent whisper filled with awe. "A white wolf, by the goddess. She's a true alpha." Dominic didn't hesitate. He stripped off his jacket and wrapped it around her, his touch sending a tremor through her exhausted body. He lifted her into his arms as if she weighed nothing. This time, when their skin touched, the searing pain of the curse was still there, but it was accompanied by something new, a deep, resonant thrum of shared power. His alpha acknowledged hers. He carried her back toward the pack house, his strides long and urgent, his jaw set in a grim line. As they broke through the tree line, they were met by a waiting figure on the veranda. "Victoria?" Her welcoming smile froze on her face as she saw the state Scarlet was in, cradled protectively in Dominic's arms. The mask of polite society fell away, and for a single, unguarded moment, Scarlet saw the pure, murderous hatred in her rival's eyes. "She can't be allowed to live." Victoria's expression screamed, "Not now." Dominic laid Scarlet gently on the bed in his own chambers, a room she had only seen in passing. It was a space that was entirely him Spartan, masculine, dominated by dark woods and shades of gray. The only personal touch was a small, framed photograph on his nightstand, a dark-haired little boy with serious silver eyes standing protectively next to a gap-toothed, red-haired little girl in a sun-drenched forest. A pang of a forgotten childhood friendship echoed in her heart. The pack doctor, a kindly older man named Chen, worked quickly, cleaning and stitching her wounds. Dominic stood by the window, his back to them, a rigid statue of barely contained fury. The captured assassins were being interrogated in the cells below, their screams a distant, chilling symphony. When Dr. Chen had finished and left them alone, the silence in the room was deafening. Scarlet struggled to sit up, wincing as her muscles protested. "They knew," she said, her voice hoarse. "Victoria and her father, they've known who I was all this time." "I know." Dominic's voice was a low growl. "One of them confessed. They were under orders to capture you. The Blood Moon Prophecy." "What is the Blood Moon Prophecy?" Before he could answer, the bedroom door opened. An old woman stood there, her face a roadmap of wrinkles, her eyes holding the wisdom of centuries. She carried a wooden staff, and her scent was of dried herbs and ancient magic. "It is time the child knew her truth," the woman said, her voice like rustling leaves. She walked to Scarlet's bedside, her gaze kind. "I have watched over you from afar for 15 years. Little one, I am Luna, the first Luna, witch and oracle to your family." This was the Luna of legend, the sole survivor of the massacre everyone had believed dead. "Luna," Scarlet breathed, the name feeling sacred on her tongue. "Your memories have been broken," the witch said gently. "Suppressed to keep your power hidden, but the time for hiding is over. The blood moon approaches." She placed a wrinkled hand on Scarlet's forehead. "This will hurt, but truth often does." A cascade of images, sounds, and feelings flooded Scarlet's mind. It wasn't like the dream. This was vivid, real. Her 10th birthday party, laughing with her father, Alpha Valerius, dancing with her mother, Luna Alara, a surprise visit from their closest allies, Alpha Sinclair and his daughter, Victoria, A young Dominic Steele was there too, her best friend, giving her a carved wooden wolf as a gift. The memory was sharp, painful. They had been like family. Then, the betrayal. The sudden attack from Sinclair's warriors. Her father fighting bravely, protecting his people. Sinclair himself. His face twisted in a greedy sneer, running him through with a silver sword. Victoria, watching with cold, calculating eyes. Her mother, a powerful warrior in her own right, creating a diversion, screaming for Marcus to take her and run, the fire, the death, all of it. The grief was a physical blow, a fresh wound tearing open her soul. Tears streamed down her face. 15 years of suppressed sorrow finally breaking free. When the vision ended, she was sobbing, curled into a ball, the pain a raw, open wound. Dominic was there. He had moved from the window and was now sitting on the edge of the bed. He didn't speak. He simply placed a large, warm hand on her back, a solid, grounding presence in the storm of her grief. The silent support was more comforting than any words could have been. They were our friends, she choked out between sobs. I played with her. Dominic, you were there. His hand tensed on her back. I remember, he said, his voice thick with a controlled rage that was terrifying to behold. My father was away. I was sent home before it happened. We were told it was rogues. Scarlett finally looked up, her green eyes, shimmering with tears, meeting his. They're here, in your house. Her family murdered my family, and she's going to be your wife. No, he said, the word a blade of ice. She is not. His gaze was absolute, a promise of retribution. They came for a true blood. They will face a shadow fang. I swear this to you, Luna. We will make them pay. Dominic, armed with the truth, descended the stairs like a vengeful god. He found Victoria in the main hall, directing servants as if she were already its mistress. Victoria, he said. His voice was quiet, but it cut through the room like a whip, silencing all activity. My office, now. In his office. He closed the door, the sound final. He leaned against it, his arms crossed, blocking the only exit. Victoria's smile was bright, practiced. Dominic, darling, you look so serious. Is our little stray causing more trouble? Her name is Luna Trueblood, Dominic said, his voice dangerously soft. The rightful true alpha. And you knew. The smile on Victoria's face didn't falter, but her eyes hardened into chips of blue ice, a threat that should have been eliminated years ago. My father was weak. He should have ensured the entire line was severed. The casual cruelty of her admission stole the breath from his lungs. You were there. You watched them murder her family, your allies, your friends. They were naive, she scoffed, believing in destined rulers and ancient blood. Power belongs to those strong enough to seize it. A lesson you, of all people, should understand. She moved closer, her scent filling the room. She placed her hands on his chest. Forget her, Dominic. She is the past. We are the future, our union, our power. He grabbed her wrists, his grip like iron, and pushed her away. The revulsion on his face was plain. There is no we. The engagement is over. The alliance is broken. Get out of my house. Victoria's face twisted into a mask of fury. You would throw away the security of your pack for a ghost, for a broken piece of the past. My father will declare war. The entire Northern Council will descend on you and crush you. Let them come, Dominic snarled, his eyes flashing silver. I am done with lies and politics. You brought a war to my doorstep when you tried to harm my... He stopped, catching himself. Victoria laughed, a high, chilling sound. You're what, Dominic, your witness, your prisoner? Or are you finally going to admit what your wolf has been screaming all along? You'd risk everything for your mate. She pulled her wrists free, her expression venomous. You've made a grave mistake. The blood moon is in 30 days. Her blood will complete the ritual. And when I am the alpha of alphas, I will burn your precious pack to the ground with you inside it." She stormed out, leaving the threat hanging in the air like a shroud. Dominic stood there, his world reordered, his path suddenly, terrifyingly clear. He had to protect Luna, not just because she was the true alpha, but because she was his, and he would tear the world apart to keep her safe. Scarlet, she still felt like Scarlet. The name Luna, a fragile, newly worn skin sat by the window in Dominic's room as the witch explained the full weight of her heritage. "The blood moon occurs once every 50 years, old Luna clarified, her voice a low chant. It amplifies all magic, all rituals. The prophecy states that when the blood moon rises, the last child of true blood will awaken. Her blood will either break the chains of the old world or burn it to ash." "Victoria wants to use my blood in a ritual," Scarlet surmised, her hand instinctively going to her arm, as if protecting it. "Yes, to steal your birthright. The ritual would grant her the power of a true alpha, making her an unstoppable force. She needs your blood, willingly given or forcibly taken." On the night of the moon's apex, a cold dread settled in Scarlet's stomach. 30 days. She had 30 days until Victoria came to claim her life and her legacy. Then, she thought of Dominic. The curse. Marcus told him. She stated quietly, "About the curse between our lines." The old witch nodded sadly. "It is the cruelest of destinies. The moon goddess gifts fated mates to strengthen her children. But a witch, scorned by an ancestor of yours centuries ago, twisted that gift into a weapon. She bound the Shadow Fang and True Blood Alpha lines together. You are destined to meet, destined to be drawn to one another. But if you complete the mating bond, the power of the stronger mate will devour the weaker, consuming their life force until they are nothing but dust." It all made a horrifying kind of sense. The magnetic pull, the simultaneous agony. Their souls were trying to merge, while the curse was trying to make one destroy the other. Every time you touch, the bond tries to form, and the curse fights it. Luna continued, "That is the pain you feel. It is a war being waged in your very souls." Scarlet's heart clenched. She looked at her hands, at the faint scars from years of fighting for survival. She had been alone for so long, and now, the one person in the entire world her soul recognized as its other half was a threat to her very existence. Or she was a threat to his. She would not be the reason Dominic Steele died. She wouldn't. Dominic found her there, still sitting by the window as dusk painted the sky in shades of bruised purple and orange. Victoria was gone, along with her entourage, a storm cloud retreating before the inevitable tempest. He didn't speak at first, just stood in the doorway, watching her. The air between them was thick with everything that had been revealed her past. Their bond, the curse that stood between them like a guillotine. "So you know," she said, not looking at him. Her voice was flat, defeated. "I know." "Then you know this is impossible," she whispered, the words tasting like poison. We can't be." He crossed the room in 2 strides, his presence filling the space, making it hard for her to breathe. He stopped in front of her, so close she could feel the heat radiating from his body. "I don't care about curses," he said, his voice a low, raw thing that vibrated through her bones. She finally looked up at him, her green eyes pleading. "But I won't let you die for me, Dominic." "And I won't let you die for me," he countered, his silver eyes blazing with a fierce, stubborn light, which, as you pointed out, leaves us with a problem. The pull was unbearable, a magnetic force, drawing them together despite the danger. It was foolish. It was suicide. And in that moment, she didn't care. He reached out, his hand cupping her cheek, His thumb traced the line of her jaw, a feather-light touch that set her skin on fire. All her resolve, all her self-preservation, melted away under that simple, tender gesture. She leaned into his touch, her eyes fluttering shut, and then he was lowering his head, and his lips met hers. The kiss was not gentle. It was a collision of desperation and longing, of two souls starved for a connection they were forbidden to have. It was heat and lightning, a perfect, exquisite storm. For one breathtaking, impossible second, there was no curse, no pain. There was only the rightness of it, the feel of his lips on hers, the possessive strength of his hand in her hair, the way her body molded against his, as if it were made for precisely this purpose. It felt like coming home. Then the curse struck. It was 1,000 times worse than before, an explosion of pure agony that ripped them apart. Scarlett screamed, clutching her chest as a phantom fire ignited over her heart, searing her from the inside out. Dominic roared, stumbling back, his own hand flying to the scar on his chest. He collapsed to one knee, his body convulsing. She could see it, even through her own blinding pain. The old scar on his chest was glowing a venomous red, and from it, thin lines of dark energy were spreading across his skin like spiderwebs. He was being torn apart. They lay on the floor, gasping for breath, separated by a few feet that felt like a continent. The beautiful, fiery connection was still there, but now it was laced with the poison of the curse, a constant, agonizing reminder of their fate. She looked at him, at the sweat on his brow and the torment in his silver eyes, and saw her own desperation mirrored there. "It won't let us," she whispered, her voice breaking. "We can't love each other. It's the cruelest truth of all." The aftermath of the kiss was a cold, hard line drawn in the sand. They couldn't touch. They could barely be in the same room without the curse thrumming between them, a low, painful hum of forbidden energy. But they had a war to win. Scarlett refused to be a victim, a princess in a tower waiting to be rescued or sacrificed. She was a true alpha. It was time she started acting like one. She sought out Marcus, her old protector, her brother in arms. "I need to learn," she told him, her eyes burning with a new fire. "I have this power inside me, but I don't know how to use it. Teach me." They trained relentlessly in the vast training grounds behind the pack house. Marcus pushed her, teaching her the fighting styles of the true blood warriors, helping her tap into the unique abilities of her bloodline. She discovered she could issue commands through the pack mind link, a subtle but powerful suggestion that lesser wolves found almost impossible to disobey. She was a natural leader, her movements imbued with a grace and authority she never knew she possessed. One morning, standing on the highest cliff overlooking the Shadowfang territory, she closed her eyes and reached out not with her voice, but with her very essence. She sent a call across the land, a summons to the lost, the broken, the packless. "You are not alone. You have a home. Your alpha has returned." And they came. First in trickles, then in a flood. Rogues from every corner of the region, drawn by a call they didn't understand but couldn't ignore. They arrived at the Shadowfang borders, wary and scarred. But when they saw her, their white wolf, their true alpha, they knelt, hundreds of them, an army of the forgotten, now united under her banner. Dominic watched from the balcony of the pack house, a strange mix of pride and awe on his face. He had spent his life building one of the strongest packs in the country, and she had summoned an army with nothing but her will. His own preparations were more conventional. As predicted, Alpha Sinclair officially declared war. Shadowfang was given 7 days to surrender the rogue murderer, or face the full might of the Northern Council. Dominic sent out riders to their allies, calling in old debts and forging new alliances. Many of the smaller packs, long oppressed by Sinclair's iron-fisted rule, readily pledged their support. Galvanized by the news of a true blood's return, his forces swelled, but they were still outnumbered. He and Scarlet began training together. It was a strange, painful dance. The mate bond made them preternaturally aware of each other's movements. They moved as one, anticipating, ducking, and weaving in perfect, deadly sync. They were an unstoppable fighting pair, but every accidental brush of skin, every moment they were close enough to feel the other's breath, sent a fresh wave of the curse's agony through them. They fought through the pain, their jaws clenched, their bodies screaming in protest, because they had no other choice. Far to the north, in a fortress of ice and stone, Victoria Sinclair was not idle. Her father was amassing their armies, but Victoria sought a different kind of power. She descended into the dungeons of their castle, to the cell of a dark witch, a creature of shadows and blood magic. "The true Alpha is stronger than we anticipated," Victoria said, her voice sharp. "She has rallied the rogues to her side." The witch cackled, a sound like grinding bones. Power responds to power, but a true Alpha has weaknesses, like any other. Love, loyalty, break her heart, and you will break her spirit. "I want more than her spirit," Victoria hissed. "I want her blood. I want her power." "Then you shall have it," the witch promised. "On the night of the blood moon, the ritual doesn't just require the blood. If a true Alpha is sacrificed, willingly or not, the power you gain will be magnified tenfold. You will not just be an Alpha of Alphas, you will be a god." A cruel, ambitious light gleamed in Victoria's eyes. "Kill her." "Good. I will enjoy that." She had one more request. "But first, I want to weaken her. Send a message. Someone close to her must fall." The night before the Northern Council's deadline was set to expire, a heavy tension settled over the pack house. The air was pregnant with the coming storm. Scarlet stood on the balcony of Dominic's room, which had quietly become hers, gazing at the moon. She heard him step out behind her. He didn't come close, respecting the invisible, painful barrier between them. They stood in silence for a long moment, two monarchs on the eve of battle. "If after all this, only one of us can survive," she began, her voice barely a whisper. "Don't," he cut her off, his voice rough. "I want it to be you, Dominic," she finished. Turning to face him, her expression was resolute. "The pack needs you." "And the world needs its true Alpha," he countered, his silver eyes locking with hers. "And I need you. That's why neither of us is dying. We'll find a way. We will both live." His certainty was a balm to her frayed nerves. Before she could reply, a scream shattered the night's stillness, a cry of pain, sharp and familiar. They both recognized the voice at the same time. Marcus. They flew down the stairs and burst into the library to find him on the floor, clutching his side. A pool of blood was spreading on the ancient rug, and the sickly, sweet smell of wolfsbane filled the air. Standing over him was a masked assassin, a silver dagger dripping with black poison in his hand, ready to deliver the final blow. A feral roar tore from Scarlet's throat. It was the sound of a true Alpha witnessing harm come to her own. The assassin, startled by her sudden appearance, hesitated for a fraction of a second. It was all the time she needed. She moved in a white-hot blur of rage, her fist connecting with the man's jaw with a sickening crack. He flew backward, crashing into a bookshelf, sending ancient tomes scattering to the floor. Dominic was right behind her, his own snarl a terrifying echo of hers, as he descended on the dazed assassin, his fury absolute. Scarlet dropped to her knees beside Marcus. "Marcus, stay with me." He was pale, his breathing shallow. The wound in his side was deep, the edges already turning a bruised, necrotic black from the wolfsbane. "Victoria sent a message," he gasped, his eyes unfocused. "Save your strength," she ordered, her mind racing. The poison was moving too fast. Dr. Chen wouldn't get here in time. The old witch, Luna, had told her of her power. Your blood can break chains and heal what is broken. Without a second thought, she bit down on her own wrist. Hard. Blood. Crimson and strangely luminous. Welled up from the wound. She pressed her bleeding wrist against Marcus's lips. "Drink," she commanded, her voice filled with an authority that even in his weakened state, he couldn't disobey. He drank. As her blood entered his system, a faint golden light began to emanate from his wound. The black edges of the gash receded, and healthy pink flesh began to knit itself back together. The color returned to his face, his breathing evening out. He was still weak, but he would live. She had done it. She had consciously used the healing power of her blood. By the time the pack warriors arrived, Dominic had the assassin subdued. Under Dominic's brutal interrogation, the man quickly confessed. He was part of an elite squad sent by Victoria, their mission to assassinate Marcus and any other senior members of the pack, to destabilize Shadowfang's leadership before the main army arrived. He revealed their hiding spot near the eastern ridge. "I'm going after them," Scarlet declared, her eyes glowing with golden fire. "This ends now." "Not alone," Dominic growled. "We go together." But Scarlet was already moving, her senses locked on the faint trail of the assassins. She was faster, her true alpha senses more acute. She outpaced Dominic and his warriors, driven by a cold, precise fury. This was an attack on her family, her pack. She found them at the eastern ridge, 4 more of them, preparing to melt back into the woods. She didn't wait for backup. It was a mistake born of rage. She took 2 of them by surprise, her attacks swift and brutal, but the other 2 were ready. They were professionals, armed with silver and wolfsbane. One of them threw a net woven with silver threads, entangling her. As she struggled, another lunged, his poisoned blade slicing a deep gash across her back. The pain was blinding. The wolfsbane poison was a fire in her veins, 1,000 times more potent to her true alpha blood. Her strength evaporated, leaving her weak and dizzy. She managed to tear free of the net and kill 1 more of her attackers, but the last one escaped into the darkness. She collapsed onto the forest floor, her vision Selang, her own blood pooling beneath her. Dominic found her moments later, his heart stopping at the sight. He had felt her pain through the mate bond, a sudden, catastrophic agony that had nearly brought him to his knees. He knelt beside her, his hands hovering over her, afraid to touch her, afraid of the curse. "Scarlet!" he yelled, his voice cracking. Her eyes fluttered open. "Dominic," she whispered, a weak smile touching her lips. "I think I was a little reckless." He gathered her into his arms, ignoring the fresh wave of cursed pain that lanced through him. "Just hold on," he commanded, his voice shaking as he raced back toward the pack house. His wolf was a frantic, snarling beast in his mind, howling in terror and rage. Mate is dying. Protect, mate. Back in the pack house, Dr. Chen's face was grim. The poison is too specialized. Alpha. It's designed specifically to attack a strong alpha's blood. Her own healing ability is fighting it, but it's not enough. She's not going to make it. Desperation, cold and absolute, washed over Dominic. He looked at Scarlet, so pale and still on the bed, and a world without her in it was a gray, meaningless void. "No," he said, the word a raw tear in the fabric of the room. "There has to be a way." The old witch, Luna, appeared in the doorway, her ancient eyes filled with sorrow. "There is one," she said quietly, "but the price may be your life." Dominic turned to her, his eyes pleading. "I'll pay it. What is it?" "The mate bond," Luna explained. "It's not just a spiritual connection, it is physical. An alpha's power can be transferred through a partial mating mark. You can pour your strength into her, force the poison out of her system. But the curse, With a connection that deep, it will attack you with its full force. It will try to drain your life force completely. It will likely kill you. Dominic didn't even hesitate. He looked at Scarlett's still face, at the woman who was his other half, his impossible, cursed destiny. A life without her wasn't a life at all. "Do it," he said, his voice firm. He leaned over her, his heart hammering. He gently tilted her head to the side, exposing the pale, vulnerable column of her throat. "Forgive me," he whispered. He lowered his head and sank his teeth into the juncture of her neck and shoulder. It was not a violent act, but an intimate, desperate one, a partial mark. As his fangs pierced her skin, he felt their bond roar to life, a conduit opening between them. He pushed his power, his vitality, his very life force into her. He felt her wounds begin to heal. He felt the poison being purged from her veins, and then he felt the curse retaliate. An agony beyond anything he had ever known consumed him. It was as if his soul was being set on fire and ripped from his body at the same time. The scar on his chest erupted in a blaze of torment, the dark lines spreading rapidly across his entire torso. He screamed, a long, tearing sound of inhuman pain, before his world dissolved into blackness. Scarlett's eyes fluttered open. The first thing she saw was Dominic, lying on a cot hastily set up beside her bed. He was unconscious, his face ashen. The scar on his chest had spread, now a terrifying web of black veins covering his entire torso. She was healed, but he had taken the poison for himself. Tears streamed down her face, hot and silent. "Why?" she whispered to his unmoving form. "Why would you do that?" As if hearing her, his eyes opened. Just a crack. They were hazy with pain, but they found hers. "Because," he rasped, his voice barely audible, "a world without you is not a world I want to live in." 1,000 miles away, Victoria received the news from her escaped assassin. She smiled, a slow, cruel curving of her lips. "Perfect," she said to her father. "He has weakened himself for her. They are both vulnerable. Launch the attack, now." The war horns of the Northern Council sounded at dawn. It was not a subtle attack. It was a declaration of dominance. An army of 500 elite warriors, clad in the black and silver of their packs, stood assembled at the edge of the Shadow Fang territory. At their head was Alpha Sinclair, his face a grim mask of ambition. Beside him, in polished silver armor, sat Victoria, her expression triumphant. Inside the pack house, chaos reigned. Dominic struggled to get out of bed, his body racked with pain from the curse's backlash. Every movement was an exercise in agony. "I have to lead them," he gritted out, trying to stand, only to collapse back onto the bed, his face pale with exertion. Marcus, his own side bandaged, pushed him gently back. "You can't, Dom. You'll die before you even reach the battlefield. Let me take command." "No," Dominic snarled, the alpha in him refusing to stand down. "Then let me—" All eyes turned to Scarlett. She stood in the doorway, dressed not in a patient's gown, but in black leather combat gear. Her fiery hair was braided back from her face, and her green eyes glowed with a fierce, unwavering light. All traces of the weak, injured woman from the night before were gone. In her place stood a queen, a true alpha. She walked to Dominic's side, her expression softening as she looked at him. "You saved my life," she said, her voice quiet but firm. "Now let me save our pack." She turned to face the assembled pack commanders and the newly sworn rogue leaders. Her voice rose, ringing with an ancient authority that no one could deny. "They outnumber us," she called out, her gaze sweeping over the warriors. "They are armed and they are disciplined, but we have something they do not. We fight for our homes. We fight for our families. We fight for a world where we are not ruled by liars and murderers. We fight for Shadowfang who stands with me." A single, unified howl, from both pack-born and rogue, shook the very foundations of the house. It was a roar of loyalty, not to an alpha of a single pack, but to the true alpha of all. The battle began in the dense forest that marked the border. Scarlet, using her intimate knowledge of the wild terrain, orchestrated a series of brilliant guerrilla-style ambushes. She divided their forces, using the rogues' stealth and the pack warriors' discipline to harass and disorient the larger, more cumbersome army. She was everywhere at once, a flash of white fur and golden eyes, her commands echoing through the mind link, a beacon of hope in the bloody chaos. She fought like a Valkyrie, a warrior born. She saved a young warrior from being disemboweled, her fangs sinking into the attacker's throat. She rallied a wavering line of defense, her presence alone enough to give them new courage. Eventually, she came face to face with her nemesis. Victoria shifted, her wolf a massive, sleek black beast with hate-filled red eyes. Scarlet met the challenge, her own white form materializing to face her. The two she-wolves, one of darkness and ambition, the other of light and destiny, collided in a furious explosion of tooth and claw. They were evenly matched, their battle a whirlwind of black and white fur, their snarls tearing through the din of the wider battle. From the highest window of the pack house, Dominic watched, a helpless, agonizing prisoner in his own broken body. He saw Scarlet fighting, saw Victoria's black form relentlessly attacking her. The mate bond screamed at him, a physical, tearing need to be out there, to protect her, to stand by her side. His wolf, his primal self, would be contained no longer. Mate in danger. With a roar that was more beast than man, Dominic forced himself from the bed. He ignored the fire that consumed his body, ignored the searing pain of the curse. He stumbled to the balcony and launched himself over the edge, shifting in midair. He hit the ground as a colossal black wolf, larger and more fearsome than ever before, his fur bristling with raw power and agonizing pain. He ignored the lesser soldiers, his silver eyes fixed on a single target, Alpha Sinclair. He slammed into his old friend, his old betrayer, with the force of a battering ram, the two alphas, one fighting for greed, the other for love, engaged in a brutal, desperate battle. Sinclair was fresh, powerful. Dominic was wounded, running on pure, suicidal rage. Scarlet saw it happen. She saw Dominic, her Dominic, fighting a losing battle. She saw Sinclair gain the upper hand, his jaws snapping inches from Dominic's throat. She saw Victoria, noticing the same thing, disengage from their fight, her red eyes gleaming as she prepared to flank Dominic and end his life while he was distracted. A choice had to be made: win her fight against Victoria, or save the man she loved. It was no choice at all. She abandoned her battle, leaving herself open, and launched herself across the clearing. Sinclair had Dominic pinned, his jaws about to deliver the killing bite. Scarlet put her own body between them. She didn't get there in time to stop the attack, only to change its target. Sinclair's teeth, meant for Dominic's throat, sank deep into her shoulder. The pain was excruciating, but a wave of pure, triumphant love washed through her. She had saved him. The moment her blood was shed for his, the moment her selfless act of love and sacrifice was complete. The world exploded in light. A golden aura erupted from both her and Dominic simultaneously. It was a shockwave of pure, untainted power that threw every wolf around them, friend and foe alike, off their feet. The curse, the ancient chain that had bound their souls in pain, shattered into a million pieces. Scarlet collapsed, the last of her strength gone. Dominic, freed from the curse's torment, shifted back, scooping her into his arms. "No!" he screamed, his voice raw with terror and grief. Above them, the sky began to bleed. The daytime sun was obscured by a creeping crimson stain. Victoria stared, her eyes wide with a horrified awe. "The blood moon," she whispered. "It's starting." Scarlet drifted in a place of white, silent light. The pain was gone. The chaos of the battle was a distant echo. She felt peaceful. A figure coalesced out of the light before her, a woman with a gentle smile in her mother's eyes. "My love, my brave daughter," the spirit of Alara Trueblood said, her voice the melody of a half-forgotten lullaby. "Mother," Scarlet whispered, tears forming in her spectral eyes. "I am always with you," Alara said, her form shimmering. "You have done so well. You have proven yourself worthy." The curse was never about destruction. My child, it was a test of love, her mother explained. 200 years ago, our ancestors, though fated mates, were driven by pride and distrust. They tried to use the bond to steal each other's power. The moon goddess, in her sorrow, allowed the curse to be placed upon them, decreeing that only a love that was truly selfless, a love willing to sacrifice everything for the other, could ever break it. Alara's spectral hand reached out, cupping Scarlet's cheek. "He was willing to die for you, and you, my daughter, were willing to die for him. You passed the test." The white light began to fade. The sounds of the world were returning. "You have a choice now," her mother's voice urged. "You can let go and join me in the quiet peace of the goddess, or you can live, complete the bond, and embrace the life you have fought so hard for." "If I live, will he die?" Scarlet asked, her greatest fear. "No." Alara's voice was filled with love. "True love does not take. It gives. It multiplies. Now choose, my daughter. Choose life. Choose him." "I choose to live," Scarlet said, her voice firm. "I want to live with him." In the chaos of the battlefield, Dominic knelt, cradling Scarlet's limp form. Her blood was soaking into the earth, her breathing growing faint. "Complete the bond," Marcus yelled, rushing to his side. "It's the only way to save her now. Your combined power might heal her." "But the curse? What if it's not truly broken? What if it kills her?" Dominic agonized, his face a mask of desperation. "Do you fear death more than you fear living without her?" Marcus demanded. Dominic looked down at her beautiful, pale face. "No." "Then mark her. Dom, finish it if you die. You die knowing you saved her." There was no more hesitation. With a prayer to a goddess he had never believed in, Dominic lowered his head and sank his fangs into the partial mark he had made before. He did not pour his power out this time. He opened his soul, inviting her in, offering everything he was. A spark ignited within Scarlet. Her instincts, older than memory, took over. Her head moved, her own teeth, sharp and desperate, finding his neck, sinking in, completing the circuit. The blood moon, now at its zenith in the unnaturally dark sky, cast a brilliant crimson ray of light directly onto them. The world vanished in a silent, blinding explosion of silver and gold light. The last remnants of the curse were incinerated. Dominic's scar, the web of black veins on his chest, dissolved into nothingness. The deep wound in Scarlet's shoulder knitted itself shut, leaving behind smooth, unblemished skin. Their power didn't consume. It merged, doubled, and soared. They awoke at the same time, their eyes snapping open. Hers glowed pure gold, his pure silver. They gasped, not in pain, but in overwhelming, ecstatic union. For the first time, they could feel each other completely, not just emotions, but thoughts, memories, the very rhythm of each other's souls. The bond was complete. There was no more pain, only a profound, earth-shattering love and a power unlike anything the world had ever seen. They rose to their feet, hand in hand, their bodies thrumming with shared energy. Together. They shifted. Dominic, a massive black wolf, now shimmered with an aura of silver light. Scarlet, a radiant white wolf, was haloed in gold. The battle ground to a halt. Every warrior, friend and foe, stared in awe at the two beings of light and power standing in their midst. They were not just alphas. They were legends made flesh. Victoria stared, her face contorted with rage and disbelief. "No!" she shrieked, the sound inhuman. That power was meant to be mine. "Retreat!" Alpha Sinclair yelled to his remaining forces. "We have lost retreat." But Victoria was beyond reason. With a maddened snarl, she launched herself at the pair. It was no contest. They moved as one, a seamless blend of grace and brutality, of shadow and light. They sidestepped her clumsy attack, their movements perfectly synchronized. A sweep of Dominic's paw sent her tumbling. A snap of Scarlet's jaws disarmed her. In seconds, Victoria was on the ground, defeated, bleeding, and utterly broken. She shifted back to her human form, glaring up at Scarlet, who now stood over her. "Do it!" Victoria spat. "Kill me! Finish it!" Scarlet looked down at the woman who had stolen her family, her childhood, and nearly her life, and she felt nothing but pity. "No," Scarlet said, her voice clear and strong. "I will not become a murderer like your father. You will not have the mercy of a quick death. You will live a long life in a silver cell, thinking about everything you've lost and everything you threw away." The remaining soldiers of the Northern Council dropped their weapons and surrendered. High above, the blood moon began to recede, its crimson light softening back into the gentle silver of the true moon. Dominic moved to Scarlet's side, his arm wrapping around her waist, pulling her close. The touch was bliss. No pain, only warmth, only home. "It's over," he murmured into her hair. "We won." 3 days later, a fragile peace had settled over the Shadowfang lands. The pack was busy rebuilding, tending to the wounded, and processing the hundreds of Northern Council warriors who had surrendered and requested to join their pack, swearing fealty to the true Alpha. Alpha Sinclair was imprisoned, awaiting a trial by the newly forming Council of Allied Packs. Victoria was locked away in the deepest, silver-lined dungeon, her connection to her wolf severed, her rage a palpable force even through feet of stone. Scarlet went to see her alone. Victoria looked up from the stone bench, her beautiful face sullen. "Come to gloat." "No," Scarlet said, her voice soft. "I came to understand why my family loved you. Victoria, we trusted you." For the first time, a crack appeared in Victoria's icy facade, a flicker of real, raw emotion. "Because you had everything without trying," she spat, her voice thick with a lifetime of resentment. "You were born a true Alpha. You were born to be loved. I had to fight for every scrap of respect, every ounce of power. Your very existence made me less. So you helped destroy my family." Scarlet finished, her heart aching not with anger, but with a profound sadness. "You took everything from me. But you know what? I pity you, because in all your grasping for power, you never learned what it was to truly love anything. And that makes you poorer than I ever was as a homeless rogue." Tears, hot and furious, welled in Victoria's eyes, and she turned her face away, refusing to let Scarlet see her break. Upstairs, Dominic and Scarlet co-chaired the first meeting of what they were calling the Crescent Alliance. Pack leaders from all over the region had gathered, some loyal, some curious, some still wary. When Dominic officially presented Scarlet not just as his mate, but as the returned, true Alpha, a ripple of awe went through the room, one by one. The Alphas, even the oldest and most stubborn, bowed their heads in deference. "The old ways are broken," Dominic announced, his voice ringing with conviction. "Pack fighting pack, Alpha against Alpha. It has only led to bloodshed. We propose a new way." An alliance, Scarlet continued, her voice resonating with a quiet strength that held the room captive. A council where every pack, large or small, has a voice, where rogues are not outcasts, but are given a chance to find a home, where power is not used to rule, but to protect. A new era was dawning. That evening, Marcus and the old witch Luna sat on the veranda, watching Dominic and Scarlet train in the twilight. They moved together in a beautiful, deadly ballet, their powers intertwined. "You knew, didn't you?" Marcus asked the ancient witch, "that their love would be strong enough to break the curse." Luna smiled, a faint, ethereal expression. "I had faith. True. Selfless love is the most powerful magic of all. My purpose is fulfilled. The true bloodline is safe. I can finally rest." She revealed that her magic had kept her tethered to the mortal world, far beyond her natural lifespan. Her only goal to see Scarlet safely restored to her birthright. Later, she went to Scarlet to say goodbye. "You have made your parents, and your entire line, proud. Luna Trueblood," she said, her eyes shimmering. "You are the future." With a final loving touch to Scarlet's cheek, the ancient witch dissolved into a soft shower of moonlight, her spirit returning to the goddess. In the spot where she had stood, a single, sealed parchment lay on the floor. Later that night, curled up in bed with Dominic's arms securely around her, Scarlet opened the letter. Luna's elegant script revealed one last, staggering secret. "My dearest child, there is one final truth you must know. Your mother, Elara, was not just the Luna of the Trueblood pack. She was a child of two worlds. Her father was your grandfather, the Alpha, but her mother was the moon goddess herself, who walked the earth in mortal form for a short time, long ago. You, Scarlet, do not just carry the blood of the first wolves. You carry the divine spark of the goddess within you. It is why your blood holds such power. It is why you were able to break the curse. And there is another prophecy, one whispered only among the witches. It says that the child born of the union between the true Alpha and the Shadow Fang Alpha, the child born of the broken curse, will be the first in millennia to speak directly with the goddess. They will be a bridge between our world and the divine. Lead them well, granddaughter. Scarlet read the letter twice, her mind reeling. Divine blood, a child who could speak to the goddess. She looked at Dominic, sleeping peacefully beside her, his face relaxed and free of pain for the first time she had known him. She placed a hand on her own flat stomach, a strange, new awareness blooming within her, a sense of a tiny, nascent spark, a new life, a new beginning. She smiled, a secret, joyous thing in the moonlight. "We're going to have a child," she whispered to the sleeping man beside her, and in her heart, she felt a profound sense of peace. The future was not something to be feared, it was something they would build together. 2 months passed in a whirlwind of change and construction. The Crescent Alliance solidified, with Dominic and Scarlet leading as fair and powerful rulers. Scarlet, now officially the Luna of Shadowfang, found her new role fit her as perfectly as her own skin. She was a bridge between the structured pack world and the wild, free-spirited rogues she had brought into the fold. Her suspicion from that night was confirmed. She was pregnant. The news sent a wave of joyous celebration through the combined pack. It was a symbol of their new era, a child of unity, born of the true Alpha line, the first in over 200 years. Dr. Chen confirmed the baby was preternaturally healthy, its life force a bright, strong flame. Together, she and Dominic began the ambitious project of rebuilding her ancestral home. The charred ruins of the Trueblood territory were cleared, and a new pack house began to rise from the ashes, not a fortress, but a sanctuary, a home for any who needed one. One afternoon, an unexpected visitor arrived at the border. He was an old rogue. his face weathered and his eyes holding the weight of centuries. He called himself Tiago. "I've come to warn you, true alpha," he said, his voice a gravelly whisper. "Word of your power and the coming of your child has spread farther than you know. It has reached the ears of the Bloodstone Pack." Dominic stepped forward, his posture protective. "I have not heard of this pack." "Few have," Tiago said grimly. "They are ancient, older than most recorded lines. They do not follow the moon goddess. They worship the shadows, the dark moon, the raw, primal power of the wolf. And their alpha, Killian Bloodstone, lives for only one thing to prove he is the strongest." A chill went down Scarlet's spine. "He has heard of your power and of the prophecy surrounding your child," Tiago continued. "He believes that by defeating you in ritual combat, he can claim that power for himself and for his heir." "No one is touching my family," Dominic snarled, his eyes flashing silver. "You do not understand," Tiago insisted. "Ritual combat is sacred, an ancient law. If a true alpha is challenged and refuses, she is deemed a coward. Your alliances will crumble. Your followers will see you as weak. He will come. He will challenge you. And you will have to accept." The thought of fighting while carrying her precious, nascent child was terrifying, but the thought of showing weakness, of letting this dark alpha threaten her family and everything they had built, was worse. "Then I will fight," Scarlet said, her voice steady, leaving no room for argument. "Scarlet, you're pregnant," Dominic protested, turning to her, his face etched with fear. She placed a hand on her belly, a fierce, protective love surging through her. "That doesn't make me weak. Dominic, it makes me stronger. I have more to fight for than ever before. I am a true alpha. I will protect my child." A week later, Killian Bloodstone arrived. He was a mountain of a man, even taller than Dominic, his body a tapestry of scars from 100 battles. His eyes were the color of dried blood. He was flanked by a dozen of his most fearsome warriors, their presence a suffocating aura of darkness and violence. He stopped before Scarlet and Dominic, his red eyes sweeping over Scarlet with a predator's appraisal. "The true alpha," he rumbled, his voice like stones grinding together. "I, Killian Bloodstone, challenge you. 3 days from now, under the dark of the new moon, a trial by combat. The winner takes all." Scarlet met his gaze without flinching. "I accept your challenge." Killian's gaze dropped to her belly, a cruel, knowing smirk spreading across his scarred face. "Pregnant? Excellent. The pup's power will be a fine bonus when I take yours." A savage growl ripped from Dominic's throat as he shifted partially, claws elongating, fangs descending. Scarlet placed a calming hand on his arm, her touch a silent command to stand down. This was her fight. She looked back at Killian, her own eyes glowing with a calm, deadly power. "In 3 days," she said, her voice dangerously soft, "you will learn the true meaning of the word mistake." The 3 days leading up to the fight were the longest of Dominic's life. He watched Scarlet prepare, her focus absolute. She meditated with the pack's new priestess. She fasted. And she trained with a quiet intensity that was both inspiring and terrifying. He trained with her, teaching her ancient techniques, every move a painful reminder that he could not fight this battle for her the night before the combat. He sat by her bedside, watching her sleep, his wolf a frantic, pacing beast in his mind, our mate, our pup, in danger. The night of the new moon was dark and starless. A large clearing in the heart of the forest had been designated as the arena. A circle was drawn on the earth with powdered silver and crushed moonstone, a sacred, binding space. Representatives from every pack in the Crescent Alliance were there to bear witness. Scarlet entered the circle first. She wore simple white ritual garments, her fiery hair the only color in the oppressive darkness. She placed a hand on her belly, feeling a faint. encouraging kick from within. "I'm with you, Mama." Killian entered from the opposite side, a behemoth of dark leather and scarred muscle, ready to die. "Little Alpha," he sneered. "I was born ready," she replied, her voice calm. "Were you?" The priestess announced the rules: combat in wolf form, to the death or until one yields, no interference. The winner takes the loser's standing and claims their power. A ritual bell chimed, its note echoing eerily through the silent woods. The fight began. They shifted. Killian became a monster, a colossal black wolf with burning red eyes, twice the size of a normal wolf. His power was raw, chaotic, reeking of bloodlust. Scarlet transformed into her radiant white wolf form, smaller, leaner, but her golden eyes shone with the light of the moon itself. Killian attacked with brute force, a tidal wave of muscle and fury. Scarlet was too fast, too agile. She was the wind to his mountain, dodging his clumsy lunges, her teeth darting in to slash at his legs and flanks, quick, stinging bites that infuriated him. Enraged, Killian unleashed his true power. He was an alpha of the dark moon, and he called upon the shadows, Inky. Grasping tendrils rose from the ground, trying to ensnare her. Scarlet was caught off guard by the dark magic. One of the tendrils caught her leg, slamming her against the edge of the silver circle. Dominic, standing just outside the circle, roared in fury, his fists clenched so tightly his nails drew blood. Every instinct screamed at him to break the rules, to leap in and tear Killian apart. Only Marcus's restraining hand on his shoulder kept him in place. Scarlet rose, shaking, a trickle of blood running from her mouth. As the drop of her divine blood touched the earth, the ground beneath her began to glow with a soft, golden light. Power, not just her own, but the power of the child within her, a direct channel to the goddess, surged through her. She stood tall, her white fur blazing, her golden eyes shining like twin suns. Her voice, when it came, was not her own. It was a chorus of all the true alphas who had come before her, amplified by the divine. "I am Luna Trueblood, daughter of the moon's own daughter. Darkness has no claim here." She let out a howl, a note of pure, concentrated power that shattered the shadows and sent Killian staggering back. The faint light of the distant stars seemed to converge on her, bathing her in a celestial spotlight. Killian stared, his red eyes wide with disbelief. He had fought demons and monsters, but he had never faced a power like this. Scarlet advanced, but she didn't attack. She stood before the massive black wolf, her gaze unwavering, and she gave a single, resonant command that shook his very soul. "Kneel." The word was a physical force. It was the command of the planet to the sea, of the sun to the day. It was absolute. Killian's massive body trembled. He fought it, his muscles locking, a defiant snarl on his muzzle. But the power of the goddess flowed through her, and it was a tide he could not stand against. With a final agonized groan, he shifted back into his human form and crashed to his knees, his head bowed in defeat. "I yield." He forced the words out, his voice raw with disbelief. "You have won, true alpha." The sacred circle dissolved. Dominic was at Scarlet's side in an instant, his arms wrapping around her as she swayed, the immense power receding, leaving her exhausted but unharmed. Killian slowly got to his feet. Everyone tensed, but he did not attack. He walked to Scarlet, and to the absolute shock of everyone present, he knelt once more, this time in true fealty. "I have lived for 300 years, he said, his voice filled with a new, grudging respect. "I have never witnessed such power. I was wrong. I asked for permission to serve you, true alpha." Scarlet looked down at the fearsome warrior. "I don't want servants." "Killian," she said, her voice regaining its strength, "I want allies." Killian looked up, a flicker of understanding in his red eyes. Then an ally I shall be. The Bloodstone Pack swears loyalty to the Crescent Alliance. One by one, the other watching alphas, their skepticism washed away by the undeniable display of power they had just witnessed, stepped forward to pledge their unwavering loyalty. Scarlet had not just defeated an enemy, she had united a world. She placed a hand on her belly, a radiant smile on her face. We did it, little one. We did it together. 6 months later, under the light of a full, peaceful moon, Scarlet gave birth. Dominic was by her side, his hand in hers, their completed bond allowing him to share her strain, to lend her his strength. As the baby's first cry filled the room, a collective howl of celebration rose from the entire pack gathered outside. It was a girl. She had Dominic's raven black hair, shot through with impossible streaks of pure silver, and Scarlet's golden eyes. They named her Aurora. When she opened her eyes for the first time, a soft, ethereal light filled the room, and a gentle voice, ancient and loving, whispered directly into the minds of Scarlet and Dominic. The daughter of my daughter has been born. She will be the bridge. The moon goddess. The prophecy was fulfilled. The celebration of her birth brought together the entire Crescent Alliance. Marcus was named Godfather. Killian Bloodstone, his allegiance absolute, presented the child with a pendant carved from a fallen star. The werewolf world, for the first time in centuries, was at peace, united. That night, as the celebrations wound down, Scarlet and Dominic stood over their daughter's crib, their arms wrapped around each other. "A year ago," Dominic murmured, his voice thick with emotion, "if someone had told me I would have a mate, a child, an alliance of 50 packs, I would have had them locked away for insanity." Scarlet leaned her head against his shoulder, watching their daughter sleep, and if someone had told me I would be more than a lonely, hunted rogue, that I would have a home, a family, that I would be a queen. She smiled. "We found our way." "We fought for our way," he corrected gently, kissing the top of her head. Their legacy was just beginning. In the years that followed, Aurora grew, a child of breathtaking power and even greater compassion. She could shift at will before she could walk. She spoke to the animals of the forest as if they were old friends, and she mediated disputes between hardened alphas with a wisdom that defied her age. She was the bridge, the promise of a brighter future. But it all began here, in this quiet room, with a family born from blood and shadow, remade by a love strong enough to break a curse and unite a world. Scarlet looked from her daughter to her mate, his silver eyes glowing with love in the moonlight, and felt a sense of profound, perfect peace. The blood moon had not been a curse upon her life. It had been a promise, the beginning of a legacy. Outside, the pack howled, a song of loyalty and love that rose to the stars, and the moon, full and silver, seemed to smile down upon them all,